think we gonna get away with it. Not up in here. Not up in here.
That's right, not up in here, because this is Tim of the Online Big Blue will bring you the best of New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. It's a Friday before the weekend before the 4th of July. I know 4th of July is on Monday. Wanted to do a video because the fact you probably won't get a chance to do a video until after the 4th. Hope everyone has a good, great, safe holiday. I want to talk about Daniel Jones for a minute because if you haven't listened, go to the 312-in-1 podcast. It's titled, Did the Coaching Carousel Screw Up Daniel Jones? And what the hell is disc golf? And I talk about Daniel Jones with OGR, and we talk about if the coaching carousel itself was one of the reasons or the rationales for Daniel Jones not being the player that some perceive that he should be. And then I laugh because I see an article today from Golden Tate, of all people, and Golden Tate says, I feel bad. He offers his sympathies to Daniel Jones. I honestly feel bad for Daniel, said the Giants' former receiver. He was drafted into a rebuilding organization 1 year, had Pat Shurmur for a year, then got Joe Judge for 2 seasons, and now another head coach, another rebuild going through in this 4th season. I love it because of the fact that it's interesting that Golden Tate is saying this, because Golden Tate basically came out at certain points of time and kind of focused his frustration on Daniel Jones that one game and said, throw me the damn ball. I'm open. Get me the ball. I'm open. And I love it because they always say that time softens the mind. And you can sit there and you can see that, maybe Golden has forgotten what he went through in New York and what he went through with Daniel Jones. And then I was thinking to myself, because like I said, we had this conversation with OGR yesterday, a couple days ago. Go find the podcast. Every place that podcasts are available. It's under All Online Big Blue Sports, 312-in-1, the Giants 2022 season. And OGR sat down and we talked about, Pat Shurmur. We talked about Joe Judge. We talked about Jason Garrett. We talked about everything that this kid has gone through. And we've mentioned before that there have been other good to great quarterbacks who have gone through bad situations, who have had lack of talent, who rose above their lack of talent offensively, their offensive line, their skill positions, or their running game, and succeeded off of talent alone. And I know I've mentioned it before when Roy Hobbs' father looked at Roy and said, talent's not enough, Roy. And he's right. It's not enough. Because you have to have the mental fortitude, the mental ability to rise above the crap. You have to be the cream of the crop. I rise to the top. I never eat a pig because a pig is a blank, But that's just what it is. You have to rise above it. Now, I blame, if you want to blame anyone right off the bat, I blame Pat Shurmur for Daniel Jones's issues. I really do. But I blame him to an extent and to a point because of the fact that he made Daniel Jones look better than he probably is. And the fact that he created a one-read quarterback. Because Shurmur came in here knowing that he had to win, knowing that he had to do something with this quarterback. Because if you go through the lineage, some people will say it was Pat Shurmur that forced the Giants to draft Daniel Jones and Daniel Jones' choice. Some people say it was Dave Gettleman. But either way, this was their guy. This was the heir apparent to Eli Manning. And I've said this a million times. When you have a quarterback for like 15, 16 years, you normally go through quarterback purgatory. This quarterback after Eli or after Brett Favre or whoever, you usually have the rebound quarterback, unless you have Aaron Rodgers on your roster. And that usually means they may not live up to expectations, and they have lofty expectations when you have 2 Super Bowl rings. Eli does. So Shurmur taking over a bad team, taking over a circumstance after he failed in Cleveland, having the one good season in Minnesota, basically made Daniel a one-read quarterback. He did the smart thing that a coach would do with a rookie quarterback. You cut the field in half, you give him a check down, an intermediate route, and possibly a deep route. And you tell him what the first read is. And then you tell him, if the first read looks open, just throw it immediately. 3-step drop, 4-step drop, throw it immediately to that first read. And that's what he did. And I've said this before. If you go back and look at the 19th season for Daniel Jones, you have to take the Tampa game out because the Tampa game is a unicorn. Nobody has any film on you when you're coming out of college. Nobody has any idea what you can do that for, your first couple games. And I said this after the Tampa game, after the Tampa win, that Daniel Jones will probably have a good game in Washington and then taper off because the league is getting more of an understanding. So that first game, of course, in Tampa, he went 23 for 36 or 336, 2 touchdowns in the big run. Then he goes into Washington, 23 for 31 for 74% for 225, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. And right there when he had those 2 interceptions, you knew the facade was coming off a little bit. And it wasn't until he went into Minnesota with that 28-10 loss when he was 21 of 38 for 55 for 182, 1-1, and reference touchdowns and interceptions. And then the New England game, which was a debacle, 15 of 31, 161, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. We're not even getting into the fumbles. And then he had his bounce back a little bit in a loss to an Arizona team, which was a bad Arizona team, which was 22 of 35, 223, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But if you take, and then he had his big game in Detroit against a bad Detroit team where he threw 28 for 41, for 66, for 300. But the problem is, if you take a look at, he'll have that rookie season, and you have to credit with it being a rookie season. He had his ups and his downs. He would have 4 bad games in a row, then 2 good games in a row. He would have 2 good games in a row, 1 good game in a row, and then 3 bad games in a row. Then he beat a bad Washington team and a bad Philadelphia team at the end. And people look at that 653 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 interception and say, okay, we have our quarterback in the future the last 2 games. But the problem is people aren't looking through what they're seeing. And what you're not seeing, or what some fans did not see, is that Shermer created a 1-read quarterback. And I think in some ways Daniel Jones fell into that 1-read option. And then you also had to worry about the fumbles. Now, when you go in, then we change over to the juggernaut. The juggernaut. I'm going to call him the juggernaut because I don't even like saying his name. I said from day one I hated Joe Judge. Didn't like the hire. I still liked the Jason Garrett hire because I think Jason Garrett gets a lot of crap for Daniel Jones, but I've said it before. I think Jason Garrett follows the edict of the head coach like any offense coordinator does. And the edict was, do not have Daniel Jones lose us the games and turn the ball over, because he was a turnover machine in 19. And again, but if you look at the consistency of the 2020 season, it follows the same pattern as 19. He'll have a couple good games, then a couple bad games. Couple good games, couple bad games. Couple good games, couple bad games. And that's the way it follows. Now, people forget in the 2020 season, he only missed 2 weeks. He only missed 2 games. So he played the majority of the season. He was inactive for 2 games. But if you take a look, like I said, he'll have 1 game where he would throw for, and you know what's funny? If you take a look at it, I never even looked at it fully. He never threw for over 300 yards in 2020. He never did. His completion percentage was up, but his yards per attempt was way down. Why? Because the Giants were focusing on not allowing Daniel Jones to lose the game and not allowing Daniel Jones to create the turnover. So now you have taken a 1-read quarterback and you have reduced him a little bit to a game manager because you're trying to manage the number of turnovers because the Giants under the juggernaut wanted to win. But again, you're not seeing the progression. You're almost seeing the average stats if you look at 2020 compared to 2019. You're almost seeing the average stats. There is a pattern. There is a pattern. You throw for 279, then you throw for 279, but with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, lost to Pittsburgh. Then you throw for 241 with an interception. Then you have 2 bad games in a row, but you throw for 179 and 190. But and I love it because people are like, well, they didn't let him throw. The game where he threw for 179, he threw 32 times. The game where he threw for 190, he threw 36 times. You have to think of this. And I'm not going to sit there and blame the offensive line like everyone loves to, because of the fact that season he held on to the ball, and it's a statistical fact, the 3rd longest in the league. I think Russell Wilson, I can't remember who the other player was ahead of him. So for a person that had such a horrid offensive line to hold on to the ball consistently, the 3rd longest in the league, that's not telling me that's 100% the offensive line problem. That's telling me there is a decision-making process issue. So now we have a quarterback who is a one-read quarterback who holds on to the ball too long, who is having decision-making issues. Now, and like I said, if you look at the pattern of his games, they still follow the same. And this is through the first 32 weeks of his career. Now, if we get into 2021, it's the same thing. There is a pattern. There is a pattern of consistency or inconsistency. You had the bad loss to Denver, where he threw for 267 and 1 touchdown. But you look at it, he threw the ball 37 times and only completed 59% of his passes. Then he had the big win, the loss in Washington with the Dexter Lawrence play. He threw for 249 and a touchdown. But again, he threw the ball 32 times. That was the game he ran 9 times for 95 yards. Then you take a look at the Atlanta loss. He threw for 266, no touchdowns, no interceptions, completed 68% of his passes. But he had a yard per attempt of 7. And then you have the good game. You have the New Orleans game where he threw 28 to 40 for 402, 2-1, and that win. But then what happens? He gets hurt in Dallas, and then he has the bad stretch between good teams. Well, not really good teams, but because Carolina's in there. But he had a good, he had that stretch in there. Or once again, he had bad games. Then you look at the modicum of consistency. You go into week 9 against the Raiders, 15 to 20, 75 yards, 110, 1 touchdown. Yards per attempt was 5.5. And then again, he goes through his other bad. He had the bad game in Tampa, and he had the game against the Eagles, but he was 19 for 30 for 202. But again, he throws the ball 19 times, and his yards per attempt is only 6.7, which is well below the league average. So now we have a one-read quarterback who had issues with holding on to the ball and consistency, who has decision-making process issues, and it shows now through week 33 to week 43 of his career going into 2021. But there is a consistency of his numbers. And I tell you, you have a 3-year sample of almost 40-something games. You're 12 and 26, and you're showing a consistent pattern. There's an issue. There's a problem. And I've said this before. You go through his first year and take out those 3 big games that he had, where he had 13, I believe he had 13 touchdowns in that first year. Then if you subtract those, he's 32 touchdowns to 29 interceptions, not counting the fumbles, for only a 62% completion percentage. And I know you always say, well, Tim, you can't take out those games, but you have to look at this. And you have to look at this logically. And people are like, Tim, why are you going over this again? Because of the fact that it's this. You have too many people that are, once again, year 4, hyping the Daniel Jones train. And I've said this before. I've never seen in New York, I can't think of anywhere in the NFL since 76 that I've seen a quarterback have such an up and down career that he gets no blame, but it's everyone else's fault. But like I said, can you fault Shermer for making him a one-read quarterback? Yes and no, but maybe he was always a one-read quarterback. Can you fault Shermer for the turnovers, the interceptions and fumbles? No. Can you fault the juggernaut and Jason Garrett for making him tentative? No, because when you tell a quarterback you are no longer a one-read quarterback and you now have to read the entire field and you hold on to the ball the third longest in the entire league in that 2020 season, it's telling me your system is not processing, your operating system is not working fast enough to process what you're seeing on the field, which is causing you to hesitate, which is causing you to hold on to the ball too long, which is causing bad things to happen. Now, you figure going into 2021, it was going to change. No, it didn't change. The decision-making issue was still there. His hesitation is still there. And I love the people that say, well, he never got to throw the ball, especially in 2021. He never got to throw the ball. Well, let's see. 37, 32, 35, 40, 13 in a game he was injured, to 51, 33, 30, 32, 30, 20, 38. So he averaged 37 attempts a game. That's throwing the ball quite a bit. And like I said, as the memory fades from the mind's eye, you forget things. And I'm saying this, you got a 25-year-old quarterback who's still, to my mind, a one-read quarterback who has decision-making issues, who still has that turnover issue never goes away. That'll never go away. And you have a fan base that's thinking, well, we got a winner here, but they all talk about drafting a quarterback in 2023 and him not being part of the organization. So in the long story short, did the coaching carousel screw up Daniel Jones? No, I don't think it did. You had the duck over with the Chargers going back to college. I believe he had 5 offensive coordinators in 5 different systems in 5 years. Talent rises above mediocrity. And the problem is Daniel Jones shows flashes that never shows consistency. When you're 12 and 26, I'm not sitting there going to tell you he's got all the tools to be successful, because I don't think he does. If I am proven wrong in this season, I will take it back like I always do. I always say it before. If I'm proven wrong, I will take it back. But you know what? Prove me wrong. And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue. We're bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. And as always, if you could like, you subscribe. If you can ring that bell, it means that'd be awesome.